I never thought I'd be the one writing something like this, but here I am. My name's Jake, and I've been with my wife, Emily, for about 6 years now. We got married pretty young, and for the most part, I'd say we had a decent life. Not perfect, but good enough. We had a house, decent jobs, her as a marketing exec, me as a project manager, and 2 kids. Things felt stable, or at least they did until recently. Lately, though, I noticed some weird stuff. Emily started acting distant, less affectionate, more cranky, and constantly on her phone. She'd snap at me over nothing, brush off my attempts to talk about our weekend plans, and spend a lot of time in the bathroom. I chalked it up to stress at work or maybe just me imagining things. But then, small things started adding up. She'd leave her phone around more often. Sometimes I'd see little notifications pop up, which she quickly dismissed or shut down. I also found her deleting messages more frequently, which struck me as odd. I didn't want to jump to conclusions. I mean, everyone has secrets, right? But my gut was telling me something wasn't right. I remember one night I came home early from work because I wasn't feeling well. When I walked in, Emily was sitting on the couch, her phone in hand, and her face looked guilty the second she saw me. That was the start of everything. I didn't say much, but I kept watching, kept noticing her little lies. She'd tell me she was working late when I'd ask where she'd been. She'd come home smelling different, like perfume I didn't recognize, or sometimes like she'd been outside in the cold for a long time, even when it wasn't cold. But I didn't have concrete proof yet, just a sinking feeling that I was missing something big. Then came the night I found her phone on the nightstand unlocked. I wasn't snooping, at least I told myself I wasn't, just wanted to grab my charger. But something made me glance at her screen. There in her messages I saw it. A conversation with a guy named Tyler. No, not just a guy, her lover, clearly. It was explicit, full of flirtations, plans to meet up and talk about keeping this secret. My stomach dropped. I sat there stunned, staring at the messages. My wife, the woman I loved, was cheating on me. With someone she met through her work, apparently, someone she was supposed to be professional with. But it wasn't just that. The way she flirted, the way she lied and gaslighted me when I'd ask questions, made me realize how much she'd been hiding. It was a gut punch. I felt angry, betrayed, humiliated. I wanted to scream, to shake her and demand answers, but I just closed the phone and kept quiet. I needed to think. Over the next few days, I started digging deeper. I got access to her email, her social media accounts, whatever I could find. Turns out this Tyler guy wasn't just some one-night stand. They'd been sneaking around for months. I found hotel receipts, secret texts, and even pictures of her wearing the same perfume he'd bought for her. It was like I was living someone else's nightmare. How had I missed all of this? How did I fail to see what was happening right under my nose? The woman I married, the woman I trusted with my life, had been betraying me for months. And the worst part, she still lied with that bitchy attitude, throwing up her defenses every time I confronted her. I remember the night I finally confronted her face to face. I was furious, my heart pounding like it was going to burst out of my chest. She was in the kitchen cooking dinner and I just couldn't hold it back anymore. I slammed the phone down on the table and looked her straight in the eyes. "Who the hell is Tyler, Emily? How long has this been going on? Don't lie to me," I demanded, voice trembling with rage. She looked at me with that arrogant smirk. "Oh, relax, Jake. It's not that big of a deal, just some sex, you know. People do it all the time. You're overreacting," she said, brushing past me. Her words cut deeper than I expected. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. I wanted to believe she was lying, that she'd somehow gotten caught up in some moment of weakness. But I knew better. All the signs pointed to something much darker, something I'd never imagined I'd have to face with my wife. And honestly, the betrayal hurt more than I thought it would. It wasn't just the sex, it was the respect, the trust, everything I believed in. That night I realized my life was about to change forever. After that confrontation, everything felt like it was unraveling inside me. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, and every time I closed my eyes I saw her face, her smirk, her dismissive tone. I kept replaying the moment she brushed off my questions, kept thinking about all the lies she told, all the little ways she'd been sneaking around. It was like I'd been blind, and now the reality hit me hard. My wife, the woman I trusted, had been cheating on me with Tyler for months, and she didn't even seem to care how much she'd hurt me. I knew I had to do something. I had to get to the bottom of it, really know what was going on, how deep this betrayal went. So I started digging more seriously. I installed a keylogger on her laptop, hacked into her email account, and even set up a hidden camera in the living room. I wanted to catch her in the act if she was still sneaking around. I wasn't proud of it, but I couldn't trust her anymore. Trust was completely shattered. Over the next few days, I watched her every move. She left her phone around less, but I still kept an eye on her. One night I followed her when she said she was going out with her friends. Instead of going to the bar she claimed, she drove to some part of town I didn't even recognize. I parked a few blocks away and watched her get into a car with Tyler. I saw her lean over and kiss him in the parking lot. That was it. I knew I had concrete proof now. What added to the chaos was how she handled the situation when I confronted her again. She was worse this time, bitchy, full of excuses, blaming me for being paranoid and controlling. She threw around words like trust and respect, but it was all fake. She said I was jealous and insecure, that she deserved better than my accusations. I felt the anger bubbling up inside me, but mostly I was just crushed. How could she do this? How could she lie so effortlessly as if I was nothing? I remember sitting on the couch, holding her phone, tears streaming down my face. I wasn't crying because I was weak. I was crying because I'd lost the woman I loved. The woman I'd built a life with, trusting her to be my partner, my best friend. And here she was, justifying her affair as if it was no big deal. She told me she needed something more, that I was too boring, too predictable, that she'd been craving excitement outside our dull little marriage. That was her excuse. I wanted to scream. Instead, I just sat there numb. That's when I started thinking about revenge. Not the petty kind, more like, how do I make her realize what she lost? How do I make her feel some of what I felt? I knew I'd have to play dirty if I wanted to get her back. I started researching her passwords, her contacts, her bank accounts. I even found some encrypted files she kept, probably more evidence of her affair or plans to run away. It was clear she'd been lying and cheating for a long time, and I needed a way to turn that against her. One day, I decided to install a remote access tool on her phone. I wanted to monitor her, see what she was doing when I wasn't around. It was risky. If she found out, she'd go ballistic, but I was desperate. I needed to know everything. Over the next week, I watched her every move, gathering proof, every message, every call, every secret plan she made with Tyler. I even discovered she'd booked a trip out of town with him, nothing too elaborate, but enough to confirm she was planning to see him again. The emotional toll was starting to wear me down. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and furious. How could she be so callous? How could she lie to my face, pretend everything was fine? I was losing sleep, questioning everything I believed in. I trusted her with my life, and now I realized she'd been living a lie. Our whole marriage was a facade. I kept telling myself I'd find a way to confront her properly, to get her to see what she'd done. But part of me wanted to tear her apart right then and there. And then something unexpected happened. The night I was about to expose her completely, I got a message from an anonymous number. It was a warning. Someone knew I was watching her, knew I was digging into her private life. The message was simple: stop or you'll regret it. My stomach tight. Who could it be? Was she aware? Was Tyler? Or was it someone else, someone trying to protect her, or maybe, just maybe, trying to scare me off? My mind was racing. I never in a million years thought this would turn into some kind of game of cat and mouse, but suddenly it was more than just infidelity. It was a matter of my own safety. All these sudden events, revelations, and threats left me shaken. I felt like I was walking a tightrope, knowing any wrong step could blow everything up in my face. I kept pushing forward, though. I needed answers. I couldn't live like this, second-guessing every move, every word. I knew she was hiding something bigger, something that might jeopardize more than just my marriage. And the more I uncovered, the more dangerous this whole situation seemed. I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd crossed some invisible line, and soon enough, everything I thought I knew was about to change forever. The next few days became a blur of paranoia and chaos. Every time I saw Emily, I felt a mixture of rage, disgust, and heartbreak. She was still acting like nothing had changed, bitchy, dismissive, throwing her usual fits when I questioned her. But I saw through her now. I saw the little cracks beneath that icy exterior. She was unraveling, and I knew it. Somehow she sensed I was onto her, which made her even more aggressive, more defensive. It was like she was trying to push me away, to make me doubt my own instincts. One night, I decided I had enough. I couldn't keep living with the constant dread and suspicion. I needed to confront her outright, get the truth out in the open once and for all. I set up a plan. I knew she'd be home late, probably with Tyler or some other guy, given her recent patterns. I prepared everything. I had my phone recording, a hidden camera aimed at the living room, and my own resolve steeled. When she finally walked through that door, late as usual, I was waiting. She looked annoyed, brushing past me without a word. I stopped her before she could retreat into the bedroom. "Emily," I said calmly but firmly, "I know everything. About Tyler, about your trips, your secret messages. I have proof. I want you to tell me the truth now." Her eyes flashed with irritation. "Oh, please, Jake, you're overreacting. This is just your insecurity talking." "No," I shot back. "I've seen enough. I know you've been cheating for months, and I want to hear it from you. Did you ever love me, or was I just some kind of placeholder until Tyler came along?" She scoffed, crossing her arms. "You really think I'm some kind of monster? You're so paranoid I can't even breathe around you anymore. Maybe you're the one who's been cheating, huh? Ever think about that?" That was the moment I snapped. I pulled out the recordings and showed her the texts, the hotel receipts, the photos. Her face lost color. She tried to deny everything, twisting her words, throwing out more lies. "It's not what it looks like," she muttered, voice trembling. "I was just messing around for fun. It didn't mean anything. Tyler's just a guy I met at work. It was a mistake, okay? But I love you. I never wanted to hurt you." Hearing her say that, I felt like I'd been punched in the gut all over again. I looked at her, at this woman I'd trusted for so long, and realized I didn't recognize her anymore. The woman who lied so easily, who dismissed my feelings, who thought she could just brush this off. I felt so many things at once: anger, sadness, a sense of betrayal that cut so deep. But I also knew I had to decide what to do next. I couldn't keep living like this, not knowing how much of her lies were still hiding beneath that hard exterior. I told her to leave, told her I needed space, time to think. She argued, threw tantrums, begged me to forgive her, but I wasn't having it. I packed her bags myself and watched her walk out the door, her high heels clicking down the hallway, her face full of contempt. That was the moment I knew I was finally free from her control, but at what cost? That night, I sat alone on the couch, staring at the empty doorway. My mind replayed every moment, the good times, the fights, the lies, and I wondered how I got here. How I went from a loving husband to someone who had to spy, hack, and set traps to uncover the woman I once thought was my soulmate. I felt hollow, broken even, but also strangely relieved. At least now I knew the truth. No more pretending, no more denial. I started thinking about revenge, not just to hurt her, but to make her feel what I'd felt. I didn't want her to get away with it. I wanted her to see that her actions had consequences, that her lies destroyed everything we built. I wasn't planning to be petty. I wanted her to understand the depth of her betrayal. Maybe sending her some evidence, photos, messages, so she'd see I wasn't just some naive guy who got duped. I wanted her to feel the sting of her own choices. Now I was trying to figure out the best course of action. Should I expose her to her friends, her family, or just let her go, live my life, and hope I could rebuild from this mess? The truth was, I was furious and hurt, and the pain made me think about doing something drastic. I realized I wasn't just angry at her cheating. I was angry at myself for not seeing it sooner, for trusting her blindly all these years. It's a strange feeling, realizing your entire marriage might have been based on lies. I keep asking myself, was I enough for her? Did I ever really matter, or was I just a placeholder while she chased what she really wanted? I don't have those answers yet, but I know one thing. I need to reclaim my life, my dignity. And maybe, just maybe, that's the real revenge. Taking back control, refusing to let her continue with her lies, and making her face the reality of what she threw away. The days that followed were some of the hardest I've ever experienced. Every morning felt like a hangover, except it was my own heartbreak pounding through me. I didn't want to be the guy who spiraled into despair, but honestly, I was close. I'd lost my wife, the woman I thought I knew, and I was left holding the shattered pieces of what used to be a life I loved. I kept replaying everything, her sneaking around, her dismissive attitude, her lies, and it made my stomach turn. I started questioning everything about us, about myself. But amidst the chaos, I knew I had to do something. Couldn't just sit here and let her destroy what was left of my trust. I decided to turn the tables on her. If she thought she could cheat and lie without consequences, she was dead wrong. I wanted her to realize she'd crossed a line, and I'd be the one to make her see how much she'd lost and how much she would regret it. The first thing I did was to gather all the proof I had. The photos, the hotel receipts, the encrypted files, everything I'd recorded. I made a file on my laptop, encrypted it so she couldn't easily access it, and decided I'd wait for the perfect moment to confront her again. I also reached out to a private investigator I knew, someone who specialized in catching cheating spouses. I didn't want to be reckless, but I needed someone who could verify everything I'd uncovered, get even more dirt, and do it discreetly. I wanted her to know I wasn't messing around. The investigator confirmed what I'd suspected. She'd been planning to leave, probably trying to settle somewhere else with Tyler. He even had an apartment nearby, which he'd been visiting under the guise of working late. It was all so sickening. I also learned Emily had been secretly withdrawing money from our joint account, probably to fund her new life. It was like watching a slow-moving train wreck, but at least now I had solid evidence, including surveillance footage of her sneaking into Tyler's place one night. Here's the thing, I wasn't just out for petty revenge. I wanted her to see what she'd thrown away. That meant I had to be strategic. I couldn't just blow everything up and make her hate me. No, I needed her to understand that her actions had consequences before it was too late, so I set up a plan. I decided I would confront her once and for all, but I'd do it with proof that she couldn't deny. I also wanted her to see the evidence I'd collected, face the reality of what she'd done, and maybe, just maybe, make her understand the gravity of her betrayal. One evening, I invited her over for a talk. Just a casual dinner, I said. I knew she'd be suspicious, but I wanted her to think I was still trying to work things out. I had the evidence ready, printed out, on a USB drive and even some video clips. When she arrived, I could see her putting on her usual attitude, but I wasn't letting her get away with her bullshit anymore. I started slow, asking her how her day was, casually bringing up the things I'd uncovered. She tried to brush it off, throwing her arrogant smirk, saying I was crazy for thinking she was cheating. That's when I pulled out the USB drive and a few printed messages. I laid everything out on the table and watched her face drain of color. Her eyes darted around like she was trying to find an escape route. "Tell me, Emily," I said calmly, "how long has this been going on? How many times did you see Tyler behind my back?" She stammered, trying to deny it, but I cut her off. "Save it, I already know everything. The hotel receipts, the secret messages, the footage of you sneaking into his apartment. I want to hear the truth now. Are you leaving me for him?" Her response was typical, more lies, more gaslighting. "You don't know what you're talking about," she sneered. "You're overreacting. This is just some stupid misunderstanding. I was just bored, that's all. Tyler's just a guy I met at work. It meant nothing." I shook my head. I was done listening to her bullshit. "No more lies," I said. "You've been cheating on me for months and I've had enough. I don't need your excuses. I want you gone. Pack your stuff and don't come back. I'm done." She looked furious, but beneath that I saw a flicker of fear. That's when I knew I had her cornered. I handed her the USB drive and told her I'd be calling a lawyer. I wanted her to know I wasn't messing around anymore. I realized I'd been naive for so long, trusting her blindly, but now I was finally taking control of my life. I didn't want her to continue hurting me or our family. After she stormed out, I sat there, feeling a strange mixture of relief and emptiness. I'd finally confronted her, laid everything out, and took back some semblance of power. But it hurt. I felt hollow inside. I kept thinking about how much I'd loved her, how I'd tried so hard to make things work, and how she had just thrown it all away. All the promises, all the plans for the future, they meant nothing to her. Now I was left to pick up the pieces. I knew I'd probably have to start over, rebuild my trust in people again, and learn to live without her. But a part of me also wondered if this was the wake-up call she needed. Maybe she'd realize what she lost, maybe she'd regret it someday. Or maybe she wouldn't. Honestly, I don't know. All I know is I'm finally free from the lies, and I refuse to go back to that broken, fake marriage. I'm done with her bullshit. I just hope I can find a way to heal from this mess. The aftermath of that confrontation was a whirlwind I wasn't prepared for. I felt numb, like I'd been punched so hard I couldn't tell what was real anymore. The house was silent except for the faint hum of the refrigerator, which seemed like a cruel reminder that life went on even when everything inside me had shattered. I stayed up all night, staring at the ceiling, replaying everything. Her lies, her sneers, the way she cheated, the way she dismissed me like I was nothing. Part of me wanted to break down, but another part refused to give her that power. The next day, I started making real plans. I contacted a lawyer, set up a meeting to figure out how to handle the divorce, and began gathering all the evidence I'd collected: photos, texts, recordings, everything. Honestly, I wanted her to see I was serious. I wanted her to feel the weight of what she'd lost. This wasn't just about cheating. It was about respect, trust, and the life we built. She threw all that away, and I wasn't going to just roll over and pretend it never happened. In the meantime, I also reached out to a few friends for support. Some of them knew about her affair but didn't say much. Others were shocked, telling me I deserved better. That helped more than I expected. I realized I'd been living in a bubble, believing everything was perfect, ignoring the little signs that now felt glaringly obvious. I'd been a fool to ignore my instincts, to dismiss the gut feelings that said something was wrong. The most unexpected thing, though, was the response I got from her family. Turns out, her sister had suspected something for a while. She'd noticed Emily acting distant, secretive, and even caught her deleting messages when she visited. She called me one evening softly and told me she was sorry I'd had to discover this way. That was a small comfort, knowing I wasn't entirely crazy for feeling something was off. But it also made me realize how much damage Emily's lies had done, not just to me, but to everyone around her. The hardest part was the emotional toll. I'd loved her, believed in us, and now I was left with nothing but anger and heartbreak. Every memory felt tainted. Our wedding day, family vacations, quiet nights talking about our future. All gone. I felt hollow, like a shell of the man I used to be. Sometimes I'd sit in the empty house and wonder how I was going to rebuild my life from this wreckage. I had to remind myself I was still alive, still standing, even if I felt like I was falling apart inside. One thing I kept coming back to was the idea of revenge, not in a petty way, but as a form of reclaiming power. I wanted her to understand that her betrayal wasn't just some mistake. It was a choice she made, and she'd have to live with the consequences. I made sure she knew I wasn't just going to disappear quietly. I left her a final message, an email with all the evidence I'd gathered, a detailed account of everything, and a clear statement that I was filing for divorce. I wanted her to see that I was serious about ending this chapter. The last few days before the legal process kicked in were filled with a strange mixture of hope and despair. I started considering what life might look like without her. Could I ever trust again? Would I find someone who valued me, who didn't betray me? I didn't have those answers yet, but I knew I had to keep moving forward. I had to redefine myself outside of this failed marriage. I couldn't let her destroy me emotionally. I had to take control. There was also a small part of me that wondered if she'd ever face her own guilt. Deep down, I hoped she felt some remorse, some regret for what she'd done. Not because I wanted her to suffer, but because I wanted her to understand the damage she'd caused. But whether she did or not, I realized I was better off without her. The betrayal had opened my eyes to how fragile everything can be, and how important it is to protect yourself, to listen to your instincts, and to never let someone else's lies define you. So now I'm just trying to focus on rebuilding, on healing, on figuring out how to move on from a love gone sour. I know I'll never forget what happened, but I also know I deserve better. I don't want to live in the past, haunted by her betrayal. I want to find peace, to find myself again. And maybe, someday, I'll look back at this hellish chapter and realize it was the wake-up call I needed. Because as much pain as this brought, it's also pushed me to finally start living for myself. To reclaim my life, my dignity, and my happiness. The divorce was finalized a few weeks after I filed the papers, and honestly, it felt like a huge weight had been lifted, even if that feeling was mixed with a deep sense of loss. I had spent so much time angry, betrayed, and humiliated, but once it was over, I felt a strange sense of clarity. I looked back at everything, at her lies, her manipulations, the betrayal, how she'd thrown away what we had, all for some fleeting thrill with Tyler. It hurt to think about all those years, all those promises, but in a strange way, I was grateful. I started rebuilding slowly. I threw myself into work, took long walks, and leaned on my friends. I didn't want to dwell on the pain forever, but I didn't hide from it either. I allowed myself to feel everything, anger, sadness, even relief. It was healing. I had always believed in the importance of honesty and loyalty, and her betrayal shattered that. But now I knew I had to rebuild my trust, not just in others, but in myself. Looking back, I realized that this experience has changed me profoundly. I've become more cautious, more aware of the signs when something's wrong. But I also learned the importance of standing up for myself, no matter how hard it is. I discovered that sometimes the most painful betrayals teach you the biggest lessons. Trust is fragile, and when it's broken, it takes time and effort to repair, if it can be repaired at all. One of the biggest lessons I've learned is that revenge, when used wisely, can be a form of healing. I didn't want to hurt her just for revenge's sake, but I wanted her to understand the damage she caused. I wanted her to see that her choices had consequences. Seeing that evidence, confronting her and walking away, all those steps gave me back some control. It reminded me that I'm stronger than I thought, even when everything seems lost. Now I'm focusing on myself. I've started therapy, working through the feelings of betrayal and heartbreak. I've realized that trusting again will take time, but I'm open to hope. One day, I want to find someone who values me, who understands that love is built on honesty and respect, not lies and secret affairs. Maybe that's a long way off, but for now, I'm content with rebuilding my life brick by brick. Looking back at this nightmare, I can honestly say I've learned a lot. Sometimes the worst betrayals come from the people closest to us, but they also teach us resilience, that even after the deepest wounds, we can heal and grow stronger. I don't regret exposing her or walking away. It was necessary, and I believe it's what saved me from further pain down the line. So to anyone out there dealing with betrayal, whether it's a cheating wife, a lying partner, or anyone you trust turning against you, I want you to know this: you are not alone. It's okay to feel broken, to feel angry, to cry. But don't forget that you have the power to take control of your life again. Trust is fragile, but your strength is. Hold on to that. Keep moving forward. Because in the end, you deserve honesty, respect, and someone who truly values you, not someone who cheats and lies their way out of love.